So this piece of 80s goodness is something I wrote for a film that I'm currently working on. It's for a party scene. Obviously it's 80s inspired. We were looking at the scene and the filmmaker decided that this was not the vibe that they wanted. It wasn't working the way that she wanted. In the process of doing this, she's come back to me with a few references on tracks that she wants me to sort of approximate, or feelings that she likes, or things that she thinks would work really well in that scene. And that got me thinking back on all the years that I've been doing this and working with directors that had an idea for a song that they wanted in a scene, and they weren't able to, for whatever reason, get that actual song. And thinking back on this, you know, I've seen it many times and there are lots of pitfalls with this kind of thing, and I wanted to go over those with you today. Often what happens is a filmmaker will either have an idea of a song that they love in mind, or they will create this scene, or a scene will exist in their film that they think this song will be perfect for this. It'll just set the tone, it'll give the mood, and it'll have this feeling that I want, and it'll be the perfect thing for this scene. They get to making their movie and they tempt the thing with the song in it, and near the end, so the post-production stage, they realize that they can't get the license for the song, or that the license, if they could get it, is so expensive because the band is really well known, or for whatever else reason. And therefore they have to abandon the idea of actually using that piece of music in the film. Then it becomes a question of asking your composer to approximate it and do what's called a sound-alike. So the first thing to talk about really is the song itself. Why does the song have emotional currency for you? Why do you feel it's important? Why does it have so much power for you? And oftentimes what happens is a song will enter our lives at a very specific time, and we'll start to associate that song with certain emotions and certain feelings that we have at that time. And one of the dangers of putting in a song that has that much emotional resonance for you, that has a meaning beyond just like the actual elements of the song, is that there is no way to recreate that feeling by doing a sound-alike, by doing a weak, kind of pale version of that. The other problem of that, of course, is that when you're so attached to something because of the emotional resonance it carries for you personally, you're less able to be objective about whether that's actually going to translate to someone else. A song that means something to me may not mean something to anybody else. So you're running the risk of being unobjective about how the song or how the music is actually functioning in your film, and whether you're actually translating and communicating something effectively to your audience. And that, of course, is the main thing that we want to do with music. We want to put something in our film that will instantly tell the audience exactly what it is we want them to understand. And if we rely too much on what we think and our own biases about a certain piece of music in a song, we run the risk of miscommunicating. We run the risk of not achieving that goal. So most of the time when you're asking for a sound-alike, you're looking for an instrumental version of that song. When you do an instrumental version, you're cutting out a huge part of what makes a song, and what makes a song powerful, which is the lyrical content and the vocal performance that carries that meaning. As a music producer myself, I know how much is lost when you take the vocal away, and how weak the actual backing track sounds without that performance on top of it, the human thing that makes it really connect us. The emotion in the voice and the quality of that performance is so much tied into how we feel about that and how we really deeply connect to it. When an artist or a group writes and produces a song, it is a singular and very involved artistic expression and an act and a process that can take days, weeks, months, and even years sometimes to create. Again, when you go to somebody else and you say, make this for me, and make it feel like this, and make it sound like this. I mean, technically, yes, it's often possible to do that, but you're missing, again, that really vital part of it, which is the passion and the emotion and that inspiration. The other thing, of course, is that these things are a collaborative thing. You have not just the artist or the band that writes the song, you have a producer that helped them shape it. You have a mixing engineer that helps them bring the song and the sonics to life, and then you have a mastering engineer who polishes everything. Most of the time when we're working on films, we're working with low budgets and we're working under time constraints, and that means we can't put in the same amount of time and effort into making these songs as a band or an artist would, and that is always going to show in the end product. Sometimes you can get lucky, sometimes you produce something and it sounds pretty close and it sounds pretty good, but to me, it's definitely always going to miss its essential soul. First of all, you're being asked to make something that has already been made and sort of do a reproduction of that. And then secondly, you're not given the time or the budget or just the resources, the other people in that chain that make the thing happen. Now, when someone comes to me and says, hey, can you reproduce this song? And oftentimes it's a chart-topping song. I mean, my first initial reaction actually is to be very flattered that they think that I can do such a thing in the short amount of time available and with the resources that I have. And sometimes I feel like I can do it, and other times I say to them, look, this is just not within my wheelhouse. This is not something that I'm good at doing. The people that make the songs that we really cherish and love, the songs that become huge hits, the songs that become iconic, you know, these people invested their entire life and their mastery and their focus on getting good at that one style of music and that one way of expressing their unique gift and their voice and their talents. Things that are hard-earned, that you can't just learn overnight, or that you can't just suddenly apply by watching a few YouTube videos or listening to a bunch of that style of music on Spotify. As much as possible, work and collaborate with people who are really masters within their own craft or who have a focus. So of course there's the nitty-gritty part of it. In most contracts between filmmakers and composers, you're asking the composer to release the filmmakers from any responsibility of infringement. That means if you do get hit with an infringement lawsuit based on the music, most contracts will outline that it's the composer that's responsible. That means every composer has to look at what they're doing and think about the music that they've made and make a consideration on whether they feel that that has infringed in some way on another person's copyright. When you ask someone to outright, do a sound-alike, they're running a risk. Okay, so let's talk about solutions. Like, what can you do instead? What's a better, more creative way to approach this thing? If you really have this one song in mind, and it's just, that's the thing you have to have, and there's no way around it, then I would really recommend trying to figure out how you can license that song before you temp it in and before you get too attached to it being in the film and then realize at the end there's no way to get this song. Find out through the regular channels of licensing, either working with a music supervisor and getting in touch with the rights holders themselves. Will you license this to my film, and how much will that cost me? And then you can negotiate a price if it's too high, and if it's still not working, then you have to move on at least. There's no point in really bemoaning that too much because it's just not going to happen. I think my favorite idea for how to solve this is to establish relationships with up-and-coming bands. My friend and frequent collaborator Gavin Michael Booth, actually a really good music supervisor in his own right, and he has wonderful relationships with a number of great artists and great bands and often features their music in his films. One great example is at the beginning of The Scarehouse, which opens with a track from an artist named Blue. And in our most recent outing, Last Call, at the end, a Simmel song plays and it just rips your heart out. You don't need a super famous, iconic song in order to achieve your emotional and narrative needs within a film, and Gavin proves that. His work and how he's managed to incorporate indie bands into it is really noteworthy because it's always successful. It's a more mutually beneficial environment. You're not giving a super famous band more money they don't really need. You're not running the risk of copyright infringement. You're not asking a composer to relinquish their own artistic expression and to also put themselves in danger of infringing on someone else's copyright. It's just a win-win-win. If you've discovered a great indie band that you love, for you to be the one that sort of helps put them on a little more of a pedestal and gives them a wonderful opportunity within the scope of your film narrative to shine. Those moments in films when a song can take over, those are magical. Those are really great moments. And I don't think there's really many musical artists that don't really savor that and would welcome any opportunity to have their music featured in that way. If you're just stuck on it and you had this song already temped in, or you have this idea for a song, you can't get it and there's just no way around it, but you need that vibe, then what I would really recommend is that you think of it less as a sound alike and more of a feel alike. What is the feeling that this song gives to you? Talk to your composer in terms of emotions. Talk to them in terms of the narrative and what the motivations within that scene are. What do you need to get accomplished? What do you need the audience to understand? And then the both of you can sort of do a deep dive into some references, and hopefully you can collect a bunch as opposed to just one song. Maybe there's a series of songs or a bunch of different artists, and you can sort of do a filtering process where it's like, what are the elements of this song? What are the individual components? What is it about these songs that make them feel the way they do, that make me feel and you feel the way you do about these works and what are you hoping to convey with them. But it's going to require you to let go of some of those attachments and to try and be less biased about the outcomes and to be more open about what those outcomes might be. It's never going to be exactly the thing that it was before, because that is literally impossible. Most of the things that I have done where someone has asked me, well, there's this song that I need and I need it to feel like this, we've managed to make something that has the same feeling but doesn't sound like that song. When you make your film, when you're making any piece of art, it is an expression. It is something that is in your voice. It is your direction, and it is your thing that you want to put out into the world and say, this is my statement, this is my artistic work, and this is something I want to stand behind. We have original performances, we have an original screenplay, we have an original idea that the movie is centered on. And all of the people that you ask to be part of your group and your team are original thinkers and wanted to do something special. You're not trying to rip somebody off or do something that's a second-rate something else. Focus on the unique and valuable expression that your film has, and make sure that every element is as unique and fingerprinted. Try not to make people do things that are just cheap and sad, pale facsimiles of another thing, because I believe your film deserves better. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.